Do what you wanna do. Do what you wanna do. Do what you wanna do. Do what you wanna do.
I'd like to bring back a special guest from California, Bob Lefsetz, who did a pretty powerful talk with Pete Tong the other day. I don't know if many of you seen, he's been sending a few blogs whilst he's been here. Gave us a load of shit for charging for the business report, which we then made it free for you all, I think. Did we do that? I hope we did.
Yeah, we did.
We did make it free, so the business report is free on the site, so very well pulled up. So Bob, come to the stage.
Okay, just, okay, I'll sit here then.
Okay, we've only got a few minutes.
Only got a few minutes?
Yeah.
You said 15 minutes, and now I got all revved up.
No, we've got a few minutes. I mean, to be honest,
I'll try to make it interesting, okay?
Yeah,
Then if it's interesting, it doesn't care how long it goes.
You know he's going to take over.
First, we got to stop with this EDM hatred, okay? This is early adopter bullshit. Okay, you were here first, you don't like the name. This is just like any band, okay? You start off with the early adopters, they get pissed off, late people come. Not an issue what they call it. But let me start from the beginning here. For me, the seminal event from an American perspective, we just had a panel about America, was something called the Electric Daisy Carnival at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum in the summer of 2011, okay? The big story about that festival is the death, okay? It's still being written about in the Los Angeles Times. That's not the story. The story is 150,000 people went to an event that nobody my age was aware of. And those who went, and I know one person who works at one of the venues, was horrified with what was going on there. That's when I knew something serious was going on. In today's Wall Street Journal, there's a story about how Kenny Chesney sells out stadiums. He doesn't. He papers in markets where he can't move those tickets. Taylor Swift can legitimately sell out stadiums. That is the only act that can do that, okay? Except for electronic music. So you have an older generation of baby boomers who have no idea what's going on, and we have a subculture driven by the internet. This is the very first musical movement that's been driven by the internet. That's very important, but I'll talk about my own personal development. So, okay, my friend Eric says, we're gonna go to Hard Halloween. Hard Halloween is an electronic music event that he lost a lot of money with his partner because he was a little in too early. The guy, Gary Richards, is independent. You went to this event. Okay, first it was like a war room. You went in and they said how they would deal with all these security issues because they've been through, Gary Richards been through it for 20 years, okay? And he's seen the ups and the downs. That's why he didn't even know whether it was gonna continue, okay? But you went there and I felt like a dirty old man. Everybody was 21 years old wearing essentially nothing. And it was like, unbelievable, and nobody I knew about it. I went to a party of people my age the very next day, and people say, you're not gonna believe this, you're not gonna believe this. We were at the football game. USC is a big powerhouse football team, American football, and we were walking to our car, and there was this event, you wouldn't believe, these girls were wearing nothing. And I said, I was there. And they like, you were there? I mean, how would you even know, okay? Let's then fast forward as the scene accelerates. Last year, around this time, I'm at Coachella. I speak for the IMS. Everybody is bitching. The big powers are coming in. They're going to buy us out. They're going to ruin it, okay? I don't hear any of those complaints this time, which is kind of interesting. But it was the same weekend as Coachella. So I go to Coachella. This is a circle jerk nonpareil. They keep telling you, oh, it's the best venue, it's the best venue. Soundbleed is horrific, horrific. There are 3 so-called tents, 2 stages. 2 things happen. One, you can't get near the Sahara tent, which is the dance tent, okay? And I'll start with the second night. Second night headliner is the Generation X paragon known as Radiohead, okay? That's exactly the point, okay? Radiohead was smoked by Swedish House Mafia. Radiohead didn't even know where they were. They brought their arena production to a festival, and they had these little tiny things up on stage, and the first weekend they wouldn't let them use the video screens. They had no idea. So they started off with a few more people than Swedish House Mafia, and they lost it. Everybody went to see Cascade in the Sahara tent. I went to the Sahara tent. You could not get in. You could get within maybe 50 feet of the Sahara tent, okay? So I'm in the trailer in the back talking to Paul Tillett. And I say, what's going on? You have to understand, some of these acts mean nothing in America. You're booking James, they happen to be friends of mine. You're booking Pulp, nobody cares. Swedish House Mafia, the place that was erupting, okay? You gotta make it totally electronic music. He says, no, it's about curation, okay? So, let's stop here. Gary Richards has a ship called Holy Ship that sells out every year. The guys at AEG do their own ship, the Coachella ship. Disaster! They're never going to do another one because they don't understand the audience. The audience wants to dance, okay? So what happens last summer, 2012? In the UK, we have festival fatigue. Suddenly, things are not that good, okay? And all the big boys come into electronic music. Let's go back to the beginning. It's about the culture. It's an underground culture. Just the way everybody knew about Electronic Daisy Carnival, they want to research. You want to go down in the rabbit hole about these acts. You sit with people 20 years old, and you always say, how do you know? There's enough information online that they can dig down deep and get that information, and everybody in the room here wants to ruin it because of money. We live in a money culture. Okay? Especially, we have the haves and have-nots. If you talk to anybody here, they'll talk to you about the VIP area. The Russians come in and they blow out whoever's there. Okay? You see it in Europe. In America, there are people who have more money. So we have the separation between the rich and the poor. Okay? You know, Ron Burkle's investing. You know, who has that kind of money? The tax rate in America, we had a guy who ran for president, had a stretch to pay 14%. Meanwhile, the people who are going to your event, they're struggling. If you graduate from college, you can't even get a job in America, okay? So how do we keep it going? What do? We have to look at the two big movements since the Beatles. We have the classic rock movement and the MTV movement. Classic rock movement was one of these things. I remember my father knocking on my door and he goes, you ever heard of this band, Led Zeppelin? Sure, he goes, they were staying at the Drake Hotel and they left $200,000 in the vault, got stolen, and they just left for England the next day. Now, the funny thing is, you get in the business, decades later said, that money they stole their own money just to fuck the promoter, but forget that, okay? My father had no idea what was going on. What happened? As a result of the run-up of the success of records, all the independent record companies were sold. Atlantic Records, that's the label Nile Rodgers was hitting here the other day, okay? Elektra Records was sold. Warner Music was cobbled together. That's what happened in the first run-up. Then we had radio. Radio, instead of being free format, which is what everybody would love here, became consolidated. We had something called corporate rock. They killed it. Now, it's interesting. This is just when the disco movement began. It was all saved by MTV. The bottom line is they burned it out. It wasn't cool anymore. MTV was cool. Music drove the culture, but it was about a monoculture. One thing. We had music video, and then radio played what video had. It was even worse in Europe, because in Europe we had state-sponsored radio, and it was very hard to get on. If you were on, you were successful. The internet comes, blows it completely apart. What do we know? A split end saying, history repeats, but always with a twist, okay? So what do we know? We know if the boom ends, we will be the last to know. Because there's a circle of information, a tribal drum amongst the younger generation. And all of a sudden they look at each other and they go, they get the email, they get the text, they see it on Facebook, wherever it is, they go, I'm done. Okay? Because they're going now because it's cool. You know, I have this argument with the AEG people all the time. People are going to Coachella as a rite of passage. It is not about the music. You have old people who grew up in these classic rock era and then in the MTV era, and they have no idea what's going on. It is a whole new thing. So now we've seen this consolidation. Let's go through some of these companies. Live Nation has billions of dollars in debt. Billions of dollars. They're not controlled by John Malone. Chairman is Greg Maffei, and they're very savvy businessmen, and we'll see how it plays out. But when you have that much debt, okay, it's a money culture. This is a business about spending. That's why all these after movies look so good, because they're spending not like the rock event. And I want to also stop here. The experience is completely different. To go to a traditional concert is a horrible experience. A, you can't get a ticket because all the shenanigans with the tickets, I can go down the rabbit hole of that. We can go into it after if you're unfamiliar with how that works. When you go, there's a gap between you and the act. You have to sit in a chair. You have to be. It's not a good experience. It is very expensive. When you go to the electronic music event, it's an experience. These people who are going, and it's basically the younger generation, it's a different culture. When I grew up, you wanted to win. They want to be in it together. If you watch extreme sports competitions, the winner will congratulate the loser, and they'll be buds and they'll go drink beer afterwards. That never used to happen, okay? So Live Nation, you have AEG. AEG doesn't seem to be in this game. They're either going to be really smart or really dumb. We don't know. We have Sillerman. I would not sleep in the same room with Sillerman, okay? Okay, this is an untrustworthy guy. In a day, he lost very serious millions on a hotel project in the Caribbean. He has his own financial, own health and personal issues. But what you have to understand, first and foremost, the buzz in the business is he doesn't have the $1 billion. He's walking around. There was a famous guy in the music business. He had a Phil Walden, Capricorn Records. He had his own plane. Couldn't buy gas for the plane. Everybody was horrified to be in the plane. Silverman's not the same thing. He's got his own money. But does he have $1 billion? Meanwhile, what is left to buy? All the big things have been bought. Ron Burkle, he's always seems to be left out at the last minute. Let's go back to Gary Richards. Gary Richards is debating whether to sell. I said, you have to sell. Let's go back to the SFX roll-up, which became Clear Channel, which became Live Nation. The people who didn't sell didn't get the check and then got fucked. So if you're in this business and you say I'm a staunch independent, you're in trouble because these people have really deep pockets. Now, you have to stay in the game. The game keeps changing because up until January, Irving Azoff was the chairman of Live Nation. They had all the acts. If you know your history of concert promotion, you know that Michael Rapino tried to execute discipline in the marketplace. All of a sudden, all the acts wouldn't place. We're taking the summer off. And if you listen to Michael Rapino right now, CEO of Live Nation, he says, if I don't pay somebody, somebody else will. So when you think you're really independent, okay, you're dependent on those acts. If Live Nation locks up those acts, suddenly you can't get talent. This is a real business situation. So it's like I'm advising Gary Richards and say, don't go with the new guy. Now, things have changed because these guys have the talent. They can freeze you out, okay? Yeah, some business remains the same, whether it's music or anything else, okay? So we're in this era where they have this gross consolidation by people who are driven by money. And the culture of the person who goes is not about money. They may save up their money for a new mobile phone. They may wear hot clothes. But if you look at the statistics, they are challenged when it comes to their own work experience. Unless we respect those people, it's going to end, okay? And it'll end like overnight. We had two things. We had the corporate rock era. Then we had disco sucks. If you know the history of the music business, 1979 was a disaster. We were only rescued by MTV. So that's your responsibility. Okay, not to put the money first, but to put the audience first. Okay, it's always going to be driven by music. We were talking about this Pasha thing. I don't get this from beginning to end. Okay, if you have the right DJ, people will walk through horseshit in a field to hear them. It's not about the venue. Okay, so we have to start with the talent. But while you're making this money, you have to think about the audience experience. What is the price? What is the value? Are they respected? Do they feel included? So far, everybody's here been doing a great job, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Thank you very much, Bob. Been great to have you at IMS, Bob. Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, it's great. As I say, I could talk about the experience. Everybody here, this is where the cutting edge thing is. Na was great, and I learned a lot. I'm just soaking it all up.
Good man. Thank you very much.